known McCoy Tyner for a long time. He called me to play on a record of his 20 years ago, you know, and, you know, he's just such a giant of jazz, you know. It was really intimidating for me to play with him. And I was pretty confident 20 years ago. So I'm gonna talk to him about that and see if he remembers, because for him it probably, he might not even remember the date, you know. It was a big deal for me. But I would love to talk to him and just see what he's up to and see how he's doing, because he's one of the few remaining giants that we have. You know what I'd also like to do, man? I'd also like to talk to these guys and maybe talk to them in front of the audience and interview them myself, because I think that as a musician and because I know them so well, I could probably ask questions that other people might not remember to ask or might not think to ask, you know?
And I'm so glad to be able to present a living legend, ladies and gentlemen, McCoy Tyner. McCoy Tyner.
First played with McCoy Tyner in 1986. The album was called Double Trios, and that was because McCoy on that album, he played with two different groups, and I was in one of the groups. And it was fantastic to play with McCoy, you know. The only problem was, you know, after McCoy finished soloing, he would always look at you and go, okay, it's your turn. And there was never anything left to play, because McCoy played everything. You know, he's such an incredible musician. Some people say that McCoy in the 60s when he played with John Coltrane had a feminine sound. I can think of a million words to describe McCoy Tyner's playing, but feminine is never the word that would ever come into my mind to describe McCoy Tyner. I mean, his sound that he developed in the 60s was a perfect complement to John Coltrane, and the thing I think of is powerful. You know, I mean, he played so powerfully. I mean, I don't know how you can play a piano in that group, because Elvin Jones was creating thunderstorms on the drums, and Train was playing all this intensity. I mean, McCoy had this piano, man, and I mean, just to be able to be heard in that environment is a feat. So he's incredible, man, because the piano's an instrument that everybody in the world plays. There's millions of people who play the piano over centuries, and you can hear three notes and you know it's McCoy Tyner. And not only that, every piano player who plays jazz, every single one, has to study McCoy Tyner when they learn how to play jazz. That's an incredible, incredible feat on that instrument, you know, because it's an instrument that's so hard to make your own. I mean, you don't use your mouth, you don't use any part of your internal body, like your voice, you know, you don't use any. It's just striking a key. And to be able to strike them in such a way that people can instantly recognize you, and strike them in a way that's so profound that everybody else feels like they have to play like that, that's really incredible.
Oh, man, McCoy's like one of my favorite piano players. Of course, the work that he did with John Coltrane and his quartet, you know, was some very innovative music. Goes without saying. His style of piano playing was revolutionary. A lot of piano players today copy his style, a lot of them. So there's another icon right there, you know, McCoy. For me, is also one of the great composers, too. There's this one song that he wrote called The Twilight Mist. I've been trying to get him to play it with me. He says doesn't remember it. Like, I like his music, the tunes that he writes as well. Playing with him is just like exciting. You can feel the energy of his sound coming through, and you have to really kind of like play it with an energetic feeling to match it. You can't just like go through the motions. You have to really come from inside your heart and your spirit and really express yourself when you play with McCoy.
I love McCoy. I grew up with McCoy in New York City. I loved to go and hear McCoy play. My dream when I started out as a jazz singer was to be able to record with McCoy Tyner, or at least to work with McCoy. I used to go to see him at clubs in New York City and take a notebook and write poetry while he was playing. His music always evokes Africa for me because of the way that he plays his rhythms and his chordal structures, and I always hear overtones of Africa. Very subtle, but very, very distinctive. For me, McCoy is one of the most prolific jazz pianists that jazz has known. I think in a lot of ways he was underrated for many years, and he's really receiving the respect and the kudos that he should have been getting a long time ago now.
You know, when you talk about McCoy, the first thing comes to mind is the fourth chords, you know, the way he moved his fourth chords is just unique. I think playing fourth exists before him, but he's the one who brings it to another level, you know, like playing any kind of changes in fourth and move them, you know, chromatically. He just do it in his own way, you know. I don't see anybody else who do that like that, you know. So I remember even when I was in Berkeley, you know, you have some classes. If you want to check McCoy Tyner voicing, you know, like Herbie's voicing, you know, Bill Evans voicing. So all these guys, what makes them unique is they have their way to approach any type of harmony.
Ladies and gentlemen, McCoy Tyner. When I hear you play, I hear the entire history of the piano. So tell me, when did you start playing the piano?
I was about 13. Yeah.
Oh, okay. For a pianist, that's relatively late, isn't it?
Yeah, my mother was wonderful. She was a beautician, and my piano was in her beauty shop.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I remember I'd have jam sessions in the shop. My mother said, "Oh, go ahead. You
really
could play." It would be like 10 players sitting next to a lady under the dryer.
With curlers. Ah, that's great.
And she was patting her foot. She said, "Boy, he's swinging by these curls."
Yeah, you sound good. So 13 years old. And what was your first, who was the first piano player that made you go, you know what, I want to do this?
Well, the thing is, the Powell family lived in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. Bud Powell and Richie Powell.
Bud Powell came to the beauty shop?
He came to the beauty shop. He didn't get his hand out, though. No, he just came by. And he was standing outside. I looked around, and he was camping in the neighborhood. And I think he heard the piano or something like that. And he stopped, and he was listening. I was like, oh, my goodness. Bud Powell's out there.
Wow.
Yeah, he was...
So what struck you, you hear the records of Bud Powell. What struck you when you actually saw him play? Was anything that surprised you?
Was his not only his dexterity, but his conviction. His conviction. You could tell music was an important element in his life.
Yes.
And been that way. He was kind of a recluse person.
Right.
Didn't talk much, whatever, But when he says something, you listen.
You listen,
especially with music.
Sure. And did you get to talk to him about music?
Well, no, not really. I mean, all he had to do was play.
Right. That was all the talking.
He would come in and play, and he would, like that.
Wow.